It's a funny thing, betrayal. It doesn't announce itself with trumpets and thunder. It's a whisper in a warm kitchen, a casual cruelty that slices deeper than any shouting match ever could. For years, I had been the silent benefactor, the bedrock on which my daughter and her husband built their perfect, Instagrammable life. They saw me as a simple man, a walking, talking ATM with hands calloused from a lifetime of work. They weren't entirely wrong, but they missed the most important part. Even the simplest man has a breaking point. After a 10-hour drive through a blinding blizzard to deliver a Christmas gift I'd poured my soul into, they finally showed me where that point was. They thought my generosity was a river that would never run dry. Well, I didn't just build a dam, I rerouted the entire damn thing. And that was just the beginning. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you're listening from. Part 1, The Quiet Bleed. My name is Frank Miller, and I'm 58 years old. For 40 of those years, I've been a custom cabinet maker and woodworker in a small town in western Montana. My hands are a roadmap of my life, scarred with the nicks of 1,000 chisel slips, stained with the ghosts of countless wood finishes, and calloused from a career of turning stubborn timber into something beautiful and useful. I live in the same house I bought with my late wife, Mary, 35 years ago. It's a modest 2-bedroom ranch, but it's solid. The foundation is true, the roof is sound, and every floorboard that ever creaked has been silenced by my own 2 hands. I like things that last. Mary has been gone for 10 years now, taken by a cancer that was as aggressive as it was merciless. In the quiet aftermath of her passing, my world shrank until it contained only 2 things: my workshop and my daughter, Chloe. Chloe was our only child, our miracle. When she was born, I held her in my arms and felt a love so fierce it was terrifying. I promised her, and Mary, and whatever God was listening, that I would always take care of her. It's a promise a man like me takes seriously, maybe too seriously. When Chloe went off to college in Boise, I paid for it, all of it. Student loans, I told her, were a form of modern-day indentured servitude, and I wouldn't have her starting her life with an anchor tied around her neck. I took on extra jobs, working weekends and late into the night. My workshop lit up like a lonely beacon in the Montana darkness. I'd come inside, smelling of sawdust and shellac, and microwave a lonely dinner, telling myself that the fatigue in my bones was a small price to pay for her future. It was at college that she met Brandon. Brandon was polished. That's the best word for him. He was studying finance, had a handshake that felt like a business transaction, and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He talked about leveraging assets and optimizing portfolios, words that felt alien in my world of mortise and tenon joints. He came from a family in Boise that had what people call old money, which, as far as I can tell, just means they've had a longer time to forget what it feels like to earn it. Chloe was smitten. She saw his ambition as a virtue, his slick confidence as a strength. I saw a man who had never had to patch a leaky faucet or change his own oil. I saw a man who measured the world in dollars and cents, and I worried he'd eventually apply the same cold calculus to my daughter. But she was happy, and that's all that mattered. I kept my mouth shut and my wallet open. They got married a year after graduation in a ceremony that cost more than my first house. I wrote the check, feeling a quiet pang as I mentally kissed my dream of buying a small fishing cabin on Flathead Lake goodbye. The check was for Chloe, I told myself. It was for her happiness. Their life together quickly became a masterclass in aspirational living. Brandon, now a wealth management advisor, insisted they needed to project an image of success. That image required a 5-bedroom, 4-bathroom house in a gated community in the Boise suburbs, a house they absolutely could not afford. The bank took one look at their income and laughed. That's when the call came. It was Chloe, her voice a carefully crafted blend of panic and sweetness. "Daddy," she'd said, "we found the perfect house. It's our forever home, but the bank, they're being so difficult." I knew what was coming. "What do you need, sweetie?" "They just need a little more security. Someone with, established assets. If you could just co-sign, it would be a formality." Brandon says we'll have you off the loan in a couple of years, tops. I'm not a stupid man. I know what co-signing means. It means my name, my credit, my house, everything I'd worked my entire life for was on the line if they missed a payment. I hesitated, the ghost of Mary's sensible voice whispering in my ear. But then Chloe played her trump card. We want to start a family, Daddy. I want my kids to grow up in a nice, safe neighborhood, like you gave me. And just like that, I was done. An hour later, I was faxing my financial statements to a loan officer in a city I barely knew, binding myself to a 30-year, $500,000 anchor for a house I would never live in. That was 5 years ago. My name was still on the loan. The requests that followed were a steady, dripping faucet of financial need. It was never a direct demand, always a carefully staged crisis. The property taxes were higher than expected. The water heater exploded. The homeowners association levied a surprise assessment for a new community tennis court. Each crisis was relayed by Chloe in a breathless phone call, and each time I'd sigh, log into my online banking and transfer the money. I didn't just send money. I sent my time. I'd make the 10-hour drive to Boise at least 4 times a year to fix things around there. Forever home. Brandon, despite his wealth management career, was hilariously incompetent with anything more complicated than a corkscrew. I rebuilt their deck, installed a new sprinkler system, and retiled their master bathroom after Brandon tried to do it himself and flooded the floor below. I never charged them a dime, of course. It was for Chloe. It was for my granddaughter, Lily, who was born 2 years after they moved in. Lily was my weak spot, a bright, beautiful little girl with my eyes and Mary's smile. For her, I would have walked through fire. Chloe and Brandon knew this, and they used it subtly at first, then with increasing confidence. Lily really needs a safer car seat, Dad, Chloe would say, and I'd send the money. Brandon's worried about the school district. The private preschool is so expensive, but we want the best for Lily, she'd hint, and another transfer would be on its way. Meanwhile, my own life was a study in deferred dreams. The fishing cabin on Flathead Lake remained a faded picture tacked to the wall of my workshop. My 15-year-old Ford F-150 rattled on its last legs, but a new truck felt like an indulgence I couldn't afford. I wore my flannel shirts until the elbows wore thin, patching them myself with an old sewing kit Mary had left behind. There was a quiet, almost humorous irony to it all. I'd be eating a simple dinner of canned soup and crackers in my small kitchen, looking at pictures on Chloe's social media of their latest family vacation to Hawaii. The caption would read, "Making memories, so blessed." I'd see Brandon showing off a new set of golf clubs that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. I never felt anger, not really. It was more of a dull, persistent ache, the kind you get from a chronic injury that never fully heals. It was the cost of being a father, I told myself. This was just what you did. You give until there's nothing left. I just never imagined they'd be so eager to see what nothing left looked like. The money, the time, the sacrificed dreams. It was all becoming a quiet bleed, a slow draining of my life force into their pristine, manicured world. And like a man slowly bleeding out, I was getting weaker, more tired, and I didn't even realize how close I was to the edge. All it would take was one more cut. A small one, but in the right place. Part 2, the Christmas cut. The week before Christmas, the sky over Montana turned a heavy, bruised purple. The weather forecasters started using words like historic and Arctic blast. Snow began to fall in thick, wet flakes, piling up in relentless drifts. The sensible part of me, the part that had learned to respect a Montana winter, said to stay put. To call Chloe, wish her a Merry Christmas over the phone, and mail my gifts. But this year was different. For the past 3 months, I had spent every spare hour in my workshop on a special project. It was a rocking horse for my granddaughter, Lily. It wasn't just any rocking horse. It was carved from a single, magnificent block of black walnut I had been saving for over 20 years, waiting for a project worthy of its grain. I poured everything I had into that horse. I shaped the curve of its back to be strong and gentle. I carved a flowing mane and a friendly, intelligent face. I sanded every inch of it until it was as smooth as river stone, finishing it with a natural, non-toxic oil that brought out the deep, chocolatey swirls in the wood. I hand-stitched a small saddle from a piece of old, supple leather Mary had used for one of her crafting projects. Tucked into a small, hidden compartment under the saddle was a tiny, carved heart with the inscription, "For Lily. Love, Grandpa Frank." It was more than a gift. It was a piece of me. It was a legacy, something that would last, something she could one day show her own children. It was everything I believed in, craftsmanship, patience, and love made tangible. I called Chloe to tell her I was coming. "Oh, Daddy, are you sure?" she asked, a note of something I couldn't quite place in her voice. It wasn't concern. It was inconvenience. "The forecast looks terrible. We wouldn't want you to risk it." "It's just a little snow," I said, my pride stung. I'd been driving in these conditions since before she was born. "I wouldn't miss Christmas with you and Lily for the world. Besides, I have something for her that I can't exactly put in the mail." A pause. "Okay, well, drive safe," she said, her voice distant. "Just let us know when you're getting close." The drive was hell. The 10-hour trip from my town to Boise is a lonely stretch of highway on a good day. In a blizzard, it was a battle. The snow swirled in a disorienting whiteout, and the wind shoved at my old F-150 like an invisible bully. Semis were jackknifed in ditches, and the flashing lights of police cars and tow trucks were the only color in a world of white and gray. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, my eyes burning from the strain of peering into the storm. I kept myself going with thoughts of Lily's face when she saw the rocking horse, carefully wrapped in heavy blankets and strapped down in the truck bed. 10.5 hours after I left my driveway, I finally pulled onto their street. It was a surreal sight. The identical oversized houses were draped in a thick blanket of snow, each one adorned with professionally installed, magazine-perfect Christmas lights. It was a silent, pristine world, utterly removed from the treacherous chaos of the highway I'd just survived. I parked in their driveway, my old truck looking like a muddy, salt-stained relic next to Brandon's gleaming black BMW. My bones ached with a deep, weary cold. I cut the engine and sat for a moment in the sudden silence, gathering the strength to move. I didn't honk or call. I wanted to surprise them. I slipped out of the truck, the crunch of my boots on the fresh snow sounding unnaturally loud. I made my way to the front door, my heart starting to thaw with anticipation. I could hear the faint sound of Christmas music from inside. I have my own key. Chloe had insisted I take one in case of emergencies. I let myself in as quietly as I could, stepping onto the immaculate welcome mat in their foyer. The house was warm and smelled of cinnamon and pine. I could hear their voices coming from the kitchen just down the hall. They hadn't heard me come in. I smiled, picturing the surprise on their faces. I was about to call out when I heard my name. I froze, my hand still on the doorknob. It was Brandon's voice, laced with its usual casual condescension. "I just don't know where we're going to put it, Chloe. It's huge. And honestly, it's so rustic. It's going to clash with everything in the playroom." A moment of silence. Then Chloe's voice, my daughter's voice, chimed in, and every word was a shard of ice in my heart. "I know, honey, it's a bit much. It smells like an old workshop." She sighed, a sound of pure, unadulterated exasperation. "But you know, Dad, he means well. It's just his tacky, blue-collar taste." My blood went cold. I couldn't feel the chill from the blizzard anymore. A deeper, more profound cold was spreading through my chest. Brandon scoffed. "He means well. Chloe, the man is a walking antique. He probably thinks this is some priceless heirloom. We'll just have to put on a big show when he gives it to Lily, and then as soon as he leaves, we'll stick it in the garage. Or maybe the basement, behind the furnace." Then came the final blow, the words that would echo in my head for the rest of my life. It was Chloe again. Her tone was light, dismissive, as if she were talking about a piece of furniture she didn't like, not her own father. "Exactly," she said. "Just smile and say thank you. As long as the checks keep coming, we can put up with a little bit of his folksy junk once a year." As long as the checks keep coming. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The warmth of the house felt suffocating. The scent of cinnamon was suddenly nauseating. I stood there in the entryway, a ghost in my own family's life, and understood everything with a blinding, brutal clarity. I wasn't a father to them. I wasn't a grandfather. I was a resource. A line of credit. A means to an end. My love, my sacrifices, my time, it was all just folksy junk they were willing to tolerate in exchange for the checks. The rocking horse, the piece of my heart I had carved and sanded and polished for my granddaughter, was an inconvenience, a tacky object to be hidden away behind a furnace. I didn't make a sound. I backed out of the door as silently as I had entered, the click of the latch drowned out by the muffled Christmas music. I walked back to my truck, my legs feeling unsteady beneath me. I looked at the neatly wrapped shape in the truck bed. Tacky, blue-collar taste. Something inside me, something that had been slowly cracking for years, finally shattered. The dull ache I had lived with for so long was gone, replaced by a cold, diamond-hard resolve. I got back into the truck. The engine turned over with a weary groan. I backed out of their pristine driveway, my tires leaving muddy tracks in their perfect snow. They probably never even saw them. I drove away from that house, from that perfect, silent street. I didn't know where I was going, only that I was going back into the storm. The 10-hour drive ahead of me no longer felt daunting. It felt like a liberation. The snow and the wind and the darkness were a comfort now, a reflection of the storm that was brewing inside me. The quiet bleed had finally stopped, and in its place, something new was beginning to grow. Part 3, the quiet click of freedom. The drive back to Montana was a fugue state. The blizzard hadn't let up, but I barely noticed. The treacherous road conditions, the swirling snow, the icy patches that threatened to send my old truck into a spin. They were all external details, a movie playing outside my window that had nothing to do with the cold, clear reality that had taken root in my mind. The 10 hours back felt shorter than the 1 minute I had stood in that foyer. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't thinking about Chloe's happiness or Lily's future or Brandon's latest financial crisis. I was thinking about me. I was replaying a lifetime of sacrifices, not with the dull ache of a martyr, but with the sharp, clarifying anger of a man who has finally realized he's been played for a fool. Every check I'd written, every weekend I'd given up, every dream I'd deferred, it all paraded before my eyes, illuminated by the harsh, ugly light of their words. Folksy junk, tacky, blue-collar taste, as long as the checks keep coming. The anger wasn't hot and explosive. It was cold. It was a precise, surgical instrument. By the time I crossed the state line back into Montana, the anger had settled into a quiet, unshakable resolve. There would be no tearful confrontation, no shouting match, no dramatic airing of grievances. They didn't deserve that. They didn't deserve another ounce of my emotional energy. My response would be as quiet and as final as a line drawn in the sand. I pulled into my driveway just as the first gray light of Christmas morning was breaking through the clouds. The house was cold and silent. I didn't bother turning on the lights. I walked through the familiar rooms, the ghosts of 1,000 happier Christmases with Mary lingering in the air. For a moment, a wave of profound loneliness washed over me. It was Christmas morning, and I was utterly alone. But then I thought of that warm, cinnamon-scented kitchen in Boise, and the loneliness was replaced by something else. Peace. A strange, liberating peace. I went to my liquor cabinet, a small oak piece I'd built myself 30 years ago. I pulled out a bottle of 21-year-old single malt scotch. A former client, a wealthy man whose library I had paneled in mahogany, had given it to me as a bonus years ago. I'd been saving it for a special occasion. A wedding, a birth, a milestone. This, I decided, was a milestone. I poured a generous 2 fingers into a heavy crystal tumbler, one of a set Mary and I had received as a wedding gift. Then I walked to my workshop, the icy air biting at my face. I flicked on the single overhead bulb, illuminating the familiar, comforting chaos of sawdust, tools, and half-finished projects. And there, still wrapped in its blankets in the bed of my truck, was the rocking horse. I carefully unstrapped it, and with a strength I didn't know I had, lifted it out and carried it inside. I placed it in the center of the workshop floor. For a long moment, I just looked at it. It was, I knew with a craftsman's objective eye, the finest thing I had ever made. It was beautiful, strong, honest, everything they were not. It deserved better than to be hidden behind a furnace. I went to the back of the shop and retrieved a can of gasoline and a box of matches. But as I stood over the horse, ready to douse it, something stopped me. Destroying it felt like letting them win. It felt like admitting that their judgment of its worth was the correct one. No, this piece of my heart, this piece of my soul wasn't junk. It would not be discarded. It would find a home where it was appreciated. I put the gas can away and went back into the house, scotch in hand. I sat down at the old roll-top desk where I did my bookkeeping. I fired up my ancient desktop computer, which whirred and groaned its way to life. I opened my online banking portal. The screen glowed in the dim morning light. I took a slow sip of the scotch. It burned a warm path down my throat, a welcome contrast to the ice in my veins. And then I went to work. My fingers, usually clumsy on a keyboard, moved with a newfound precision. I navigated to the scheduled transfers page. The list was longer than I had realized, a monument to my own foolishness. First, there was the Chloe Mortgage Assist, a monthly transfer of $800. It had been running for 62 consecutive months. With a single, satisfying click, I selected it. Cancel this recurring payment, the screen asked. I clicked yes. A small red "Canceled" appeared next to the line item. The sound of the mouse click was louder than a gunshot in the silent house. It was the sound of a chain breaking. I took another sip of scotch. Next, Chloe's cell phone. I'd been paying her phone bill since she got her first flip phone in high school. Another click. Cancel. Next, Chloe car insurance. A semi-annual payment of $950. The next one was due in February. Cancel. I scrolled down, hunting and deleting every financial tether that bound me to them. The monthly deposit into a savings account for Lily that I knew, with sickening certainty, they were raiding for their own expenses. Cancel. The automatic payment for their cable and internet bundle, a housewarming gift that had never ended. Cancel. Click, click, click. Each click was a reclamation. Each click was a small act of rebellion. Each click was me taking my life back. The quiet bleed was finally being staunched, not with a bandage, but with a tourniquet. When I was done, the scheduled transfers page was empty, a blank slate. I leaned back in my chair and drained my glass. The sun was fully up now, casting a pale winter light across the snow-covered yard. It was the quietest Christmas morning I had ever known, and it was the most liberating day of my life. I knew the fallout would come. It wouldn't be immediate. They wouldn't notice on Christmas Day. They'd be too busy putting on a big show for Lily opening presents bought with my money before hiding my heart away in the basement. They wouldn't notice until the first bill came due, until the first payment bounced. Let them. I raised my empty glass in a silent toast, to new beginnings, to tacky, blue-collar taste. To the quiet, beautiful, and deeply satisfying click of freedom. I went to bed and slept more soundly than I had in years. Part 4, The Entitled Echo. The silence lasted for 3.5 weeks. It was a blissful, uninterrupted period of peace. I worked in my shop, took long walks in the snow, and started sketching designs for that fishing cabin on Flathead Lake. The idea no longer felt like a faded dream. It felt like a blueprint. For the first time, the money in my bank account felt like it was truly my own. I knew the storm was coming. I just didn't know when it would make landfall. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the workshop, planing a piece of maple, the scent of fresh wood shavings filling the air. My phone, which had been blissfully silent for weeks, rang with a jarring urgency. I glanced at the caller ID, BRANDON. I let it ring 3 times before picking up just to savor the moment. I wiped my hands on my jeans and answered with a calm, neutral, "Hello." Frank, his voice was tight, strained, like a guitar string wound too tight. There was no hello, no how are you, just a bark. "We have a problem, a big one." I continued to gently plane the wood, holding the phone between my shoulder and ear. "Oh, what's that, Brandon?" I asked, my voice betraying nothing but mild curiosity. "The mortgage payment, it bounced. The bank just called." They're charging us late fees, Frank. This is going to hit our credit score. What the hell happened? The sheer, unadulterated entitlement in his voice was breathtaking. There was no question of "did you forget?" or "is everything okay?" It was a pure, unfiltered accusation. You had a job to do and you failed. I paused, letting the silence hang in the air. "Well, that does sound like a problem, Brandon," I said slowly. "Did you forget to transfer the money?" There was a sputtering on the other end of the line. "What? No, your payment, the extra payment you always send, it wasn't there." "Did you cancel it?" I set down my plane and leaned against my workbench, a small, grim smile touching my lips. It was time for the first little turn of the screw. "You know, Brandon," I began, adopting a tone of sincere confusion. "I've been thinking a lot about finances lately. It's my age, I guess. And I got to worrying. Here I am, sending you all this extra money every month, and it occurs to me that I might be doing you a disservice." "A disservice," he spluttered, the indignation radiating through the phone. "Absolutely," I said, warming to my theme. "You're a professional wealth management advisor. You help people with their money for a living. By propping you up, I'm essentially creating a crutch. I'm hindering your ability to apply your own professional expertise to your own life. It felt irresponsible of me. I decided the best thing I could do for you and Chloe was to take a step back and let you manage your own portfolio, to empower you." The silence on the other end was thick with disbelief and fury. I could almost hear the gears grinding in his head as he tried to process this. "Empower me?" he finally choked out. "Frank, we built our entire budget around that money. We can't afford the mortgage without it." "Well, now I find that hard to believe," I said, my voice dripping with faux sincerity. "A man with your financial acumen, I'm sure you just need to re-leverage some assets or optimize your spending. You'll figure it out. It'll be a great learning experience." "This isn't a learning experience, this is a disaster, and Chloe's phone was shut off this morning. Was that you too?" "Her phone? Oh my, is that right?" I clicked my tongue in sympathy. "You know, I was just cleaning up some of my old recurring expenses, getting my own house in order. That one must have gotten swept up in the tidying. My mistake. But I'm sure you can add her to your family plan without any trouble." He was starting to lose it. His voice was rising in pitch. "Our family plan? Frank, do you have any idea how much that costs? This is unbelievable, after everything you promised Chloe." "I promised Chloe I would always take care of her," I said, my voice suddenly losing its light, playful tone and becoming as hard and cold as Montana steel. "And I have. I put her through college. I paid for her wedding. I gave you the down payment for a house you couldn't afford and have been subsidizing it ever since. My daughter is taken care of. My daughter has a husband who is a wealth management advisor. It's his job to manage the wealth. So manage it, Brandon." And with the satisfying final click he deserved, I hung up the phone. I stood there in the quiet of my workshop for a long moment, the echo of his entitled rage still ringing in my ears. The dark satisfaction I felt was immense. It was the feeling of a weight being lifted, a score being settled. Phase 2 of the counterattack came an hour later, this time from Chloe. Her text messages started as a string of frantic question marks. "Dad, Brandon just told me what you did. What is going on? Call me now." I ignored them. I went back to my work, the rhythmic scrape of the hand playing a soothing balm to my soul. An hour after that, the public campaign began. I got a notification that I had been tagged in a post on Facebook. It was from Chloe. I opened it and read, my lips curling into a humorless smile. It was a long, vague, passive-aggressive screed, beautifully crafted for maximum sympathy and minimum factual content. It was accompanied by a softly lit photo of her and Lily looking pensively out a window. "Feeling so heartbroken today," it began. "It's a painful lesson to learn that sometimes the people who are supposed to love and support you unconditionally are the first ones to pull the rug out from under you. When family chooses to inflict financial and emotional pain, you have to find the strength to protect your own peace and your children's stability. Sending love to anyone else out there dealing with toxic family dynamics. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is also the healthiest. Family betrayal, setting boundaries, protecting my peace. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. Within minutes, the comments started rolling in from her circle of friends and Brandon's family. "Oh, sweetie, I'm so sorry you're going through this. Sending hugs. You are so strong. Cut out that negativity. I can't believe someone would do that to you. Horrible." My phone started ringing again. This time it was my sister, then my cousin. They had seen the post. They were confused, concerned. They had been fed the curated narrative of the cruel, unreliable father who had abandoned his daughter and granddaughter in their time of need. Brandon and Chloe weren't just angry. They were arrogant. They were so confident in their victimhood, so certain of their control over the family narrative, that they believed they could publicly shame me back into submission. They thought they could use social pressure as a weapon to force me to turn the money spigot back on. They had severely underestimated their opponent. They thought they were dealing with a simple old carpenter. They had forgotten that a carpenter's entire profession is based on planning, precision, and knowing exactly how to build a structure that can bring the whole damn house down. They had launched a public attack. Now it was my turn to start quietly gathering my tools. Part 5, The Ledger of Lies. They thought their greatest weapon was public opinion. My greatest weapon, it turned out, was my quiet, methodical nature and a lifetime of meticulous record-keeping. I'm the kind of man who keeps the instruction manual for a toaster he bought in 1998. It's not a hoarding instinct. It's a belief that you should be able to account for things. And for the last 5 years, I had been unknowingly accounting for their greed. After the Facebook post went live and the family phone calls started, I didn't get angry. I got organized. I shut off my phone, made a fresh pot of coffee, and sat down at my desk. My old computer whirred to life, and I began my work. I created a new folder on my desktop and named it with a touch of dark humor, the Miller Family Endowment Fund. My first stop was my online banking portal. Banks, God bless them, have memories like elephants. I went back 5 years, to the month they bought that absurdly large house. I began downloading every single monthly statement. As they downloaded, I went through them with a fine-tooth comb and a yellow digital highlighter. Every transfer to their account was highlighted. June 2020, transfer to CHLOE Miller, $50,000, memo, house down payment. July 2020, recurring transfer, $800, memo, Chloe mortgage assist. September 2020, transfer to CHLOE Miller, $3,500. Memo, property tax help. December 2021, transfer to BRANDON Miller, $5,000. Memo, emergency water heater. The list went on, a relentless digital record of the quiet bleed. I saved each highlighted statement as a PDF file, numbering them in chronological order. The emergency water heater, I recalled with a grim chuckle, was followed 2 weeks later by Chloe posting pictures of their surprise getaway to a luxury spa resort in Scottsdale. Next, I went to my email archives. I searched for Brandon's name. Up popped the email chain from 5 years ago with the mortgage broker. And there it was in black and white, the loan application we had both signed. I downloaded the entire 80-page document. I digitally circled my name where it appeared as co-borrower, highlighting the clauses that made me 100% responsible for their $500,000 debt if they defaulted. I saved it to the folder. Then, the real fun began. I went to Chloe's Facebook page. She had, in her infinite arrogance, never blocked me. I imagined she wanted me to see her passive-aggressive post and feel the sting of her public shaming. What she didn't realize was that her social media profile was not a weapon against me, but a detailed, time-stamped confession of her own hypocrisy. I started scrolling back, year by year, month by month. It was like an archaeological dig into a civilization built on lies. For every major cash transfer I had a record of, I found a corresponding social media post celebrating a luxury they couldn't possibly have afforded. March 2022, my bank statement showed a $4,000 transfer labeled "Help with Lily's medical bills." Chloe's Facebook, 1 week later, showed a picture of a brand new Peloton bike in their living room. Her caption, "Finally joined the club. Self-care is so important." I took a screenshot of my bank transfer and a screenshot of her post, placing them side by side in a Word document. August 2023, my statement showed a $6,000 transfer. The memo, dictated by a frantic Chloe over the phone, was urgent roof repair. Her Instagram 3 days later was a photo album titled Hawaiian Paradise. It featured pictures of her, Brandon, and Lily sipping drinks with little Umbral. Laws in them at a beachfront resort in Maui. I screenshotted the album cover, featuring a smiling Brandon giving a thumbs up, and placed it next to the record of the roof repair funds. October 2024, a transfer of $2,500 for a new furnace inspection and emergency maintenance. 2 weeks later, Brandon posted a picture of himself on the golf course with a brand new set of Titleist irons. New sticks are finally here. Big thanks to my amazing wife for the early Christmas present. I screenshotted that too. I worked for hours, a grim, methodical detective piecing together the undeniable story of their deception. I compiled bank records, loan documents, emails, and their own social media posts into a single, comprehensive timeline. It was an airtight case. Each claim of a desperate need for help or emergency funds was directly contradicted, often within days, by their own boastful documentation of a lavish lifestyle funded by my sacrifices. The final piece of the puzzle was the rocking horse. I went out to my workshop and took several high-quality photographs of it from different angles, capturing the intricate details of the carving and the beautiful grain of the walnut. I even took a close-up of the tiny, hidden heart with the inscription to Lily. I added these photos to a separate section of my dossier. The caption was simple: the tacky, blue-collar junk I drove 10 hours through a blizzard to deliver on Christmas Eve. When I was finished, I had a 27-page, spiral-bound ready document. I titled it with a final flourish of dark irony, a 5-year financial review of the Miller Family Endowment Fund. I didn't send it to anyone. I didn't post it on social media. I printed a single, high-quality color copy at the local print shop. Then I put it in a handsome leather-bound folder and placed it in my briefcase. An amateur seeks immediate revenge. A craftsman waits for the perfect moment to reveal his work. They had chosen their public forum, the court of social media and family gossip. I would choose mine. It needed to be a place where image and reputation were paramount. A place where the humiliation would be total and inescapable. I started thinking about the holidays. Christmas was their territory. But Easter was hosted by Brandon's mother, Eleanor. Eleanor, a woman who prided herself on her family's pristine reputation and social standing above all else. Yes, Easter dinner would do just fine. All I needed was an invitation. And I knew, after weeks of me ignoring their calls and the family gossip mill churning, a pity invitation from a well-meaning relative was almost guaranteed to come my way. They would want to mediate and fix things. Little did they know they'd be setting the perfect stage for my grand finale. Part 6, The Easter Reckoning. For the next 2 months, I became a ghost. I didn't answer calls from Chloe or Brandon. When relatives called to get my side of the story, I was polite but maddeningly vague. It's a private family matter, I'd say. Chloe and Brandon have their perspective and I have mine. I'm sure we'll sort it out eventually. My silence, combined with their increasingly frantic and self-pitying social media posts, created the exact effect I was hoping for. To the wider family, it looked like I was the stubborn, unreasonable one, too proud to admit my fault. The narrative they had so carefully crafted was solidifying. I was the villain. Just as I predicted, 2 weeks before Easter, the call came. It was from Brandon's aunt, Carol, a kind but hopelessly naive woman who believed any conflict could be solved with a pot roast and a bottle of Chardonnay. "Frank," she began, her voice oozing with gentle concern, "Eleanor is having her Easter dinner and we all think it would be a wonderful opportunity for everyone to talk, to clear the air. For Lily's sake, please say you'll come." It was the perfect trap and they were the ones who had laid it. "You know, Carol," I said with a world-weary sigh, "I think you're right. It's time to put this behind us." The day of Easter dinner was bright and unseasonably warm. I put on my best, and only suit, a dark gray wool I'd bought for Mary's funeral and hadn't worn since. I placed the leather-bound folder containing my financial review into my old briefcase. And in the passenger seat of my truck, carefully buckled in, was the walnut rocking horse. I arrived at Aliner's house precisely on time. It was a sprawling colonial in the most exclusive neighborhood in Boise, a place where the lawns were unnaturally green and the silence was broken only by the hum of electric cars. I was the last to arrive. As I walked in, the conversation in the grand living room came to a sudden, awkward halt. There were about 15 people there, Brandon's parents, his siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins. And in the center of it all, standing next to a stone-faced Brandon, was Chloe holding Lily. She looked at me not with anger, but with a kind of triumphant pity. She thought I was here to surrender. Aliner, Brandon's mother, a woman with perfectly coiffed silver hair and a spine made of rebar, greeted me with a frosty nod. "Frank, thank you for coming." "Aliner, thank you for having me," I said calmly. I walked past them all and went back out to my truck. A few curious faces watched through the large picture window. I unbuckled the rocking horse and carried it in. As I set it down in the entryway, a hush fell over the room. It was, even in this house filled with expensive art and antiques, a stunning piece of work. I saw a flicker of something in Chloe's eyes, not admiration but panic. This was not part of her script. Little Lily, however, had no script. Her eyes went wide. "Horsey," she squealed, wiggling out of her mother's arms and running towards it. She reached out and touched its smooth, polished surface with a look of pure, unadulterated wonder. I smiled at her, a genuine smile for the first time in months. "That's for you, sweet pea," I said softly. Chloe quickly scooped her up. "Lily, honey, let's not touch that right now, it's dusty." The lie was so blatant, so reflexive, it was almost beautiful. We sat down for dinner at a long mahogany table that could have seated 20. The tension was thick enough to carve. Brandon, seated at the head of the table, decided it was time for the public execution. After the main course was served, he cleared his throat, tapping his wine glass with a fork. "I'm glad we're all here," he began, looking directly at me, "because I think it's important for family to be honest with each other, and lately the support we thought we could count on, it just hasn't been there. It's been a trying time for Chloe and me, facing this abandonment. It's taught us who we can truly rely on." He paused, letting his words hang in the air, soaking up the sympathetic nods from his side of the family. This was my opening, the one he had so generously provided. I placed my napkin on the table and stood up, my briefcase in hand. "Brandon, I couldn't agree more," I said, my voice calm and even carrying easily through the suddenly silent room. "Honesty is important. And since you brought up finances and reliability, I thought it might be helpful to clear the air with some actual facts." I opened my briefcase and pulled out 10 copies of my spiral-bound, 27-page report. "I've prepared a brief financial review," I announced, walking around the table and placing a copy in front of Aliner, Brandon's father, and each of his aunts and uncles. I made sure Chloe and Brandon got one too. "If you'll turn to page 1, I said, returning to my seat. "You'll see the details of the $50,000 down payment I gifted to Chloe and Brandon 5 years ago. On page 3, you'll find a summary of the $800 monthly mortgage subsidy I've paid for the last 62 months, for a total of $49,600. A stunned silence had fallen over the table. The only sound was the rustle of pages as people started to leaf through the document. I saw Aliner's eyes narrow as she scanned the first few pages. "Please direct your attention to pages 5 through 18, I continued, my voice never rising. "This is a detailed timeline. On the left, you'll see a record of cash transfers I made for various emergencies. On the right, you'll see corresponding social media posts from Chloe and Brandon, documenting the vacations, luxury goods, and expensive hobbies that these emergency funds were actually used for. You'll note the $7,000 urgent roof repair that became a trip to Hawaii, and the $4,000 Lily's medical bills that miraculously transformed into a Peloton bike. I looked directly at Chloe and Brandon. Their faces had gone from smug to pale to a blotchy, horrified red. Chloe was staring at her copy as if it were a venomous snake. Brandon looked like he was going to be physically ill. "Finally," I said, my voice softening slightly, "if you'll turn to the last section, the appendix, you'll see photographs of the Christmas gift I made for my granddaughter. The one I drove 10 hours through a blizzard to deliver. The one I later overheard my daughter and her husband describe as tacky, blue-collar junk that they planned to hide in the basement, while reassuring each other that, and I quote, 'As long as the checks keep coming, we can put up with it.'" I let that last sentence hang in the dead air. The silence was absolute. No one was looking at me anymore. Every single eye at that table was now fixed on Chloe and Brandon. Eleanor had placed her copy of the report on the table and was staring at her son with a look of such profound disappointment and disgust it was chilling. I sat back down and calmly took a sip of water. I had not raised my voice. I had not insulted anyone. I had simply built a case, piece by piece, and presented the evidence. The craftsmanship was undeniable, and the demolition was complete. Eleanor was the first to speak. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a surgeon's scalpel. "Brandon, Chloe, is this true?" Brandon opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Chloe just stared at her plate, tears of humiliation silently streaming down her face. Eleanor stood up, her composure perfect, her face a mask of cold fury. "I think you should both leave my house. Now." And with that, the trial was over. The verdict was in. Part 7, Savoring the New Sunrise. The aftermath was not loud, but it was devastatingly effective. Chloe and Brandon's public shaming at that Easter dinner became the stuff of Miller family legend. They hadn't just been exposed. They had been humiliated in front of the very people whose opinions they valued most. Their carefully constructed image of successful, self-made young professionals was shattered, replaced by the ugly reality of spoiled, deceitful grifters. Eleanor, a woman for whom appearances were everything, was mortified. The financial support she and her husband had been providing to Brandon, a small allowance to help them get established, I later learned, was cut off that same day. They were, for the first time in their coddled lives, completely and utterly on their own. The consequences were swift and brutal. Within 2 months, the for sale sign went up in front of their oversized house. They couldn't afford the mortgage on Brandon's salary alone. They sold it for a loss in a cooling market, and whatever small profit they made was immediately eaten up by the debt they had accumulated living far beyond their means. They moved into a small, 2-bedroom apartment in a less fashionable part of Boise. The gleaming BMW was repossessed. The Peloton was sold on Facebook Marketplace. The gushing social media posts about their blessed life ceased entirely. Silence took their place. I heard through the family grapevine that Brandon's career took a hit, too. How can you be a wealth management advisor when you can't even manage your own wealth? The story of the Easter dinner and the meticulously detailed financial report spread through their social circle like wildfire. His credibility was shot. I felt no joy in their downfall, but I did feel a profound sense of justice, a quiet satisfaction in the balancing of the scales. They had not been destroyed by me, they had been destroyed by the truth. I had simply held up a mirror, and they had crumbled at the sight of their own reflection. As for me, my life began to open up in ways I hadn't allowed myself to imagine for years. The money that had once flowed in a steady stream to Boise now accumulated in my own savings account. The number on the screen was no longer a source of anxiety, but a symbol of possibility. That summer, I finally did it. I found a small, 1-acre plot of land on the western shore of Flathead Lake. It was overgrown and had a rundown old fishing shack on it, but the view of the Mission Mountains across the water was worth $1 million. I bought it with cash. I spent the rest of the summer and the fall clearing the land and building my cabin. I designed it myself, a simple, elegant structure of cedar and stone, with a large porch facing the water and a workshop in the back that was twice the size of the one at my house. I did almost all the work myself, my hands finding a deep, familiar joy in the creation of something real and lasting. My sister and her husband would come up on weekends to help, and we reconnected in a way we hadn't since before Mary died, laughing and working under the big Montana sky. One crisp autumn morning, just as the sun was rising and painting the mountains in shades of pink and orange, I sat on my newly finished porch, a mug of hot coffee warming my hands. My new fishing boat, a modest but sturdy 16-foot aluminum craft I'd named the Mary II, bobbed gently at the small dock I had built. My phone buzzed. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize. I opened it. "Dad, it's Chloe. I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I wanted to know if Lily could see her rocking horse." I looked out at the water at the dawn of a new day, and I thought about the little girl with my eyes. She was the only innocent party in this whole sorry saga. The horse had been sitting in my living room, a silent testament to a love that had been betrayed but not extinguished. I typed back a simple reply. "It's at the front door of the house in town. The key is under the loose rock by the porch. She can have it. But the house is being sold next month. I'm living at the lake now." It was the truth, delivered without anger or bitterness. It was just a fact. My old life, the one that revolved around them, was being sold off. My new life was here. I never got a reply. But a week later, when I went into town to pick up supplies, I saw that the rocking horse was gone. I hoped it had found a good home. I hoped Lily would love it. But its fate and theirs was no longer my burden to carry. I drove back to my cabin, a quiet smile on my face. The air was clean, the future was my own, and the only recurring payment I had to worry about was the one I owed to myself. To live the rest of my life with the quiet integrity and self-respect I had so dearly earned. The sun was fully up now, sparkling on the surface of the lake, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly, deeply at peace. It turns out that the best revenge isn't loud and fiery, but quiet and well-lived, savored one peaceful sunrise at a time. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more content. Share your thoughts on what happened in the comments below. To listen to the next story, click on the video appearing on your screen now.